Imola is over and F1 is moving immediately on to the next race, which is the jewel in the crown, the Monaco Grand Prix, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I'll be previewing, and then at the end of the video I'll be giving out my early predictions for the Grand Prix. If you enjoyed the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get straight into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top 5 teams later on, which is Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull, so stick around for that. Yes, Imola is over, and it was a very tense end to the Grand Prix, where Lando Norris was reeling in Max Verstappen right at the end, but he just ran out of laps. Now though, F1 is moving on to Monte Carlo for the Monaco Grand Prix, a race which all of the drivers want to win, and a race that rewards the drivers that push to the absolute limits. The walls of the circuits are very close, and any slight error or move off of line can and usually does end up with punishment, which is a trip into the wall, either at Saint-Devote, Mirabeau or the swimming pool chicane. This race will see the teams and drivers bring the maximum levels of downforce as they try to find a way around the twisty street circuit. There is no reason for them to not really run maximum levels of downforce because the straights are not long enough for slipstream and DRS to play a factor at all. And also, they need the maximum levels of grip to get around this circuit. Last year's Monaco Grand Prix was affected by rain, as was the 2022 Grand Prix, and looking forward to the weather, it seems like we could see yet another weather-affected race, either in qualifying or for the main Grand Prix itself, which could really throw a spanner in the works for the top teams, but for us the fans, we could be treated to maximum excitement. Qualifying at Monaco is all important, and a tough qualifying can lead to a very long and difficult Grand Prix, as Sergio Perez found out last year. And for qualifying, if it is dry, the teams will have access to the softest tyres in the Pirelli range once again, as they will be bringing the softest tyres, meaning that the hards will be the C3 tyre, the mediums will be the C4, and the soft tyres will be the C5 tyres. Monaco is typically very straightforward with a one-stop race, using the medium tyres and then the hard tyres, as it is the shortest race of the year, being only 280 kilometers in length as opposed to the usual 306 to 308 kilometers, and the average speed is typically very low, meaning that the tyres are not stressed in any real way. However, last year there was still a total of 37 pit stops, as the intermediates were required after the majority of drivers had already made their first stop, switching from the medium to the hard tyres, and then of course they needed the intermediates. If the race is dry, then expect a fairly straightforward one-stop race, going from the mediums to the hard tyres. As mentioned, overtaking at Monaco is very difficult, but it's not impossible, especially if we do get a shower, and you can see that as last year there was a total of 22 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the circuit does feature one DRS zone down the pit straight into Saint-Devote. However, it's not much of a DRS zone and doesn't really make much of a difference at all. Last year's pole position lap time was a 1:11.365, and that was set by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, as he had blistering pace in a final lap to snatch pole position from Fernando Alonso. During that lap, Verstappen reached a top speed of 289 km per hour, showing just how the cars don't actually get up to top speed around this circuit. In the Grand Prix itself, the fastest lap was set by Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, and that time was a 1:15.650, over 4 seconds off of Max Verstappen's pole position lap time. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video so far, then would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about the top 5 teams, starting with Aston Martin. For Aston Martin, the race at Imola was a complete disaster, as it seems the upgrades have resulted in a step backwards, as it now looks like they're actually the 6th fastest car, but they have the benefit of starting off strong, so they're still 5th in the Constructors. Fernando Alonso had a shocking weekend, crashing in practice, going off track in qualifying, and then not having a great deal of pace in the Grand Prix. And the Aston Martin looks like it will be a world apart from where it was this time last year when Alonso was gunning for pole position. Instead, it looks like he could be gunning for a shot at Q3 instead. Teammate Lance Stroll did have a more impressive weekend at Imola, but I anticipate that Monaco could be a more tricky weekend, and I fear that we are going to see at least one of these cars in the wall at some point during the weekend. They do still have a healthy gap to VCARB, but VCARB are potentially in a better position going forward. For Mercedes, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix was an improved performance, apart from the random and nonsensical pit stop for George Russell towards the end of the race, and it does look like the new upgrades have helped move them forward. However, they are still a long way away from Ferrari, McLaren and Red Bull. They are now pretty much in no man's land as the fourth fastest team in the sport. In Monaco, it will be interesting to see how they get on. In the last couple of years at Monaco, it has not been a happy hunting ground for Lewis Hamilton, as he has had a few not so great races. In 2021, during his championship contending year against Max Verstappen, he finished the race in 7th place. In 2022, he finished in 8th place, and in 2023, he did finish 4th, but it would have been further down the order if he actually stayed dry. He will be hoping that these upgrades, he can try to maybe find a way to finish in the top 5. For McLaren, the upgrades that they brought to the Miami Grand Prix have fully rejuvenated the team, and they are now looking like they are the second fastest team in the sport, and that they can be a genuine threat to Max Verstappen and Red Bull. In the closing stages at Imola, Norris was able to maintain the tyre life and keep the pace, whereas Verstappen was really struggling with the tyres, and going into the Monaco Grand Prix, I think they could potentially take pole position. The car works very nicely in slow speed corners, which of course was an issue for them in the past, and Monaco is full of tight and twisty slow speed corners. The circuit is also bumpy, which is going to be better for McLaren compared to Red Bull, so I think we are going to see a very close fight in which the Papaya team could come off looking very, very good. Norris is in the form of his life since winning his first race in Miami, and he nearly made it 2 in a row. At Monaco, I honestly see no reason why he will not be right at the front once again. Teammate Piastri is also looking very strong, and he will be looking to find a way to win his very first Grand Prix as well. For Ferrari, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix was a good result, but it does look like they've now fallen behind McLaren even after the upgrades. Charles Leclerc did score a podium finish, however I do feel like it would have been 4th place if Piastri didn't get a penalty for his qualifying issue, and going into Monaco, it will be interesting to see if anything happens that hampers Charles Leclerc this year. Most years, something tends to crop up that ruins his shot at glory at his home event, but he does at least now seem to be getting on top of issues that he did have from the start of the year, and he now looks to be the driver in the ascendancy in that team. Teammate Carlos Sainz has had a couple of difficult races now, and he will be looking to bounce back at the Principality. Ferrari should be strong in Monaco, but I'm just not sure if they will be stronger than McLaren. And finally, for Red Bull, Verstappen just clinched victory, but it was mighty close as the competition continues to breathe down his neck. And we saw from his teammate a pretty poor performance as Perez now moves down to 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, despite starting the season so well. Going into Monaco, I anticipate that we are going to see Red Bull not be as strong as we sometimes see from them. It is a bumpy street circuit, and we've seen them be vulnerable when bumps are involved. Miami and Imola were somewhat bumpy circuits, and it was incredibly close, and we know from last year that their main weakness was street circuits. With this in mind then, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't win the Grand Prix at this weekend. So, with that in mind then, what are my very early predictions for the Monaco Grand Prix? Well, I think the top midfield team and midfield driver will be Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, and the reason I think for that is even though Alpine are down on power, and the car hasn't been that great a lot this year, the team has definitely improved that car, and at Monaco, power is not as important, so it doesn't matter that they're actually down in this area. So I do think Alpine could go very well at Monte Carlo, so that's why I'm going to go for Esteban Ocon to be the top midfield driver. But what about pole position? Well, for pole position, I'm actually going to go for Lando Norris in the McLaren, as I do anticipate they are going to be very good this weekend. But what about the top 5? Well, in P5, I'm going to go for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. P4 will be Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. P3 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P2 will be Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And yes, I think Lando Norris is going to win the Monaco Grand Prix. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.